This was like crazy compelling. So compelling that I just want to make this video right now, even though I look like a mess. Hey, looking super cute and super fancy today, I know. But I just had to pop on here because I just saw this video on YouTube that's put out by Melissa. I can't remember her last name. Is it Melissa Dougherty? And she had this fantastic interview with another gentleman who specializes in trying to reach out to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and invite them to be evangelical or mainstream Christian. I can't remember what specific denomination, but yeah. And listening to that whole video, first of all, I was just automatically struck with how sweet Melissa is and that gentleman was. Like, they put their whole souls into wanting to make sure that the people around them aren't deceived. And I think that's just wonderful. I love that they care that much. And especially since I've been born and raised in this church my whole life. I grew up in South Texas. It's not often that I've encountered people who have sincerely desired my welfare as a member of my church. They're more like, I've encountered a lot of people that wanted to prove me wrong rather than invite me to get to know Jesus of the Bible. And so it was just, I thought that was very sweet. But they brought up something that I had never thought of before. This was like crazy compelling. So compelling that I just want to make this video right now, even though I look like a mess. So she brought up the whole idea that like why Mormons aren't Christian is because it's in their own writings that they're not Christian. And I went, what? Because like I read the Bible. I believe in Jesus of the New Testament. I believe in Jehovah of the Old Testament. And I'd heard before that people had considered us to not be Christians, but never really had an argument behind it. So she pointed this out. It was actually in Joseph Smith history. We believe that a prophet was called by God again, named Joseph Smith in the 1800s. He was a young boy. He was confused about which church to join, and essentially so he went out into the woods near his house to pray, and God came to him, God and Jesus Christ, as two separate individuals, and said, none of the churches around are ones that you should join. In fact, I'm calling you to restore that which was lost, to restore the church that Jesus had implemented on the earth. And it took several years before he could actually do that, because he was only 14 at the time, and that was just his first encounter. But during that first encounter, God and Jesus Christ say something very specific. So here's what it says in Joseph Smith history. It's all one chapter. So Joseph Smith history 1, and it's verse 19. And this is a direct quote from God, like from God the Father to Jesus after Joseph Smith, he sees God and he's like dumbfounded. And when he comes to himself, he finally asks the question that he came there for, which is like, which church should I join? Which is the truth? And God says, like, none of them. So this is in 19 what he says. He said, I was answered that I must join none of them, for they were all wrong. And the personage who addressed me said that all their creeds were an abomination in his sight, that those professors were all corrupt, that they draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They teach for doctrines the commandments of men, having a form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. He again forbade me to join any of them. And many other things he did say unto me, which I cannot write at this time. So Melissa in this video pointed out that this is a passage of our own scripture, and it just like clicked. Like it was never about mainstream Christians saying that members of my church aren't Christian. And the term to be a Christian kind of comes with a lot of assumptions. It's assumed that you believe in the Trinity. It's assumed that you believe that there is no other scripture that could be provided, that you're highly skeptical of prophets in the latter days because it's something that's counseled to be wary of by Jesus himself. Like there's a lot of assumptions that come with it doctrinally, and that I can agree that I don't believe in. And I've spent so many years of my life trying to defend and say, no, I believe in the same Jesus that you do. I am a Christian. But I don't know if that's important for me to do anymore. Because I do believe that Joseph Smith was called to be a prophet. And I don't just have his words to go on that. That's why we have the Book of Mormon. It is proof that he didn't write it, that it is an ancient text that was buried in the earth that God directed him to go find and translate, which the more that I think about it, it's just a brilliant strategy by God. Because if the assumption is correct that there is no church on the earth that actually teaches his doctrine in fullness, then he has to provide proof, right? And it makes sense that he would provide proof through an unlearned person, an ancient text that is equal in holiness and validity as the Bible. Which, I am so sorry, if me saying this and saying this candidly makes you feel like I am just brushing this off, I don't. I love the Bible. Like, the New Testament was my jam. I read the Book of Mormon first. I felt the Spirit of God, but I read the New Testament and I knew Jesus. Like, that will always be my heart. And I love the Old Testament because there's so much more grace and mercy there than I think we give ourselves credit for, or than we give like Jehovah credit for. And like, I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it without having had an open mind. And I mean, I am by no means a world religion professor or expert at all, but I've like attended Jewish worship services. I've attended evangelical, Methodist, Catholic worship services, and not just once, like multiple times. I've read the Quran, and I've watched like a lot of videos, people explaining their faith and their doctrine and stuff from biblical perspectives. You know, I listen to people of other faiths all the time, so I'm not saying this as though like I'm buried under a rock and I'm in my own like little Mormon bubble. I don't stay in bubbles, and I love listening to commentary from people of other faiths on the Bible, because like in my perspective, the church that I belong to was restored in the 1800s, and yet there have been scholars for over 1800 years that have been mulling over New Testament writings, and over a couple thousand years who've been mulling over Old Testament writings. So why not take advantage of their expertise? And I've talked with like pastors and preachers of other faiths, like face to face. So while I am not an expert, I have not been closed-minded either. So yeah, like I have a huge affection for the Bible and like so much respect for people of other religions. There are plenty of people that I've encountered that have lived their faith better than I have, quite frankly. And so I hope that I'm not coming across as somebody who feels like I have all truth and I know what's right from wrong. I'm just giving you my perspective and telling you what I believe. Being called a Christian is no longer important to me, because I can see now, thanks to Melissa to pointing out, that like the God that I'm following and that I believe is the God of the earth specifically said that the creeds of other religions are not something to follow, that they're not true. And if I believe that, then I need to stop worrying about being considered a Christian. I'm not entirely sure what to call myself other than like I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ. And that's a little bit more long-winded than saying I'm a Christian, but I guess I'm okay with that. So I guess I'm trying to say that for all of those people out there that were trying to say for all of those years that I'm not a Christian, I guess you're right. Like I'm not a Christian, but I do believe that Jesus Christ is the only person who can save me and bring me back to God. He is the only person who can forgive me. He atoned for my sins in the Garden of Gethsemane. He died for me on the cross. And he is the person who, when I have a good relationship with him, makes every other relationship in my life so much better. So whatever you want to call that, or whatever that looks like, I believe that. And I'm very grateful for people like Melissa. She's a very thoughtful person. She's a very caring individual. She researches thoroughly before she makes statements, and I really respect her for it. And I am okay with the fact that people like her are out there trying to invite people like me or members of my church into a greater relationship with the Bible. I think that's wonderful. And if they think that I'm delusional, I'm okay with them thinking that. Like, I believe that I'm not. I can't say I know 100%, but every time that I read the Book of Mormon, man, there's a certain spirit of truth and peace and enlightenment that comes into my life. I've asked God over and over and over. Is this true? Am I just being thrown for a loop? And I've done the same thing for the Bible, and I've done that every time that there's a new prophet. When one of our prophets passes away and a new one comes in, I've asked God every single time, and every single time he's been like, yeah, you're good. Stay the course. I'll let you know if anything changes. We're good. And I have to say that, like, my relationship with Jesus started in the New Testament, really. Well, from my end, if you believe in Jesus, you know that he was reaching out to you way before you even started to reciprocate. But I started to reciprocate from the New Testament, and yet my relationship has gotten so much deeper with the Book of Mormon. And I think that's the point, is that they're between the Bible and the Book of Mormon, they're not trying to fight with each other over which gospel is true. They're both the same gospel. They're both the same Jesus, trying to witness to you that he's never going to give up on you. And that's just incredibly beautiful to me. That's why I stick around. I think that book is true. I believe it. But if you don't believe it, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong or make you. You're welcome to believe what you want to believe too. Anyway, sorry this one was quick and dirty, but I just had to react to it. It was just too cool and too insightful for me. Dara, over and out.